Emily ran to the phone that vibrated on the kitchen counter. He was chopping vegetables for dinner, but his heart raced when he saw the doctor's name on the screen. It was an unusual time for calls. "Dr. Harris? Is something wrong?" he asked, trying to stay calm as he wiped his hands on his apron. "Emily, it's nothing serious, but I have news that I believe will change your life. His tests arrived and, congratulations, you're pregnant." For a moment, Emily's world froze. She felt a mixture of shock, joy, and apprehension all at once. "Pregnant?" she repeated in a whisper, as if the word needed time to make sense. His heart filled with emotion, but before he could process it, his mind was flooded with doubts. As soon as she hung up, she took a deep breath and decided to tell Ethan that very night. He was always saying that he dreamed of building a family someday, but was that day now? Hours later, when Ethan arrived, exhausted from work, Emily was waiting for him in the room with a nervous smile. "We need to talk, love," he said, holding his hands. "Today I received incredible news. We're expecting a baby." Ethan's smile disappeared immediately, replaced by a look of incredulity. He let go of her hands and took a step back. "Are you serious?" he asked, almost as if he didn't want to hear the answer. "Yes, I know it's unexpected, but isn't it wonderful?" Emily tried to get some spark of enthusiasm from him, but Ethan shook his head, confused. "Emily, that wasn't in my plans right now. We can barely handle what we have at the moment. A child? I don't know if I can." The floor seemed to disappear under Emily's feet. "But you always said you wanted a family, that it was part of his future." "Yes, from the future, not now," Ethan exploded, his words like knives. "I'm not ready for this, Emily, neither financially nor emotionally." Tears began to stream down her face, but she tried to keep her composure. "Ethan, this is not something we can just ignore. It's real. It's part of us." "I need time to think," he muttered, already pulling away. Without even looking back, he grabbed his car keys and walked out the door, leaving Emily alone, hugging her womb as if she were the only anchor in a sea of uncertainty. That night, lying on the couch, Emily realized that life as she knew it had changed forever. The dream of a perfect family was shattering before his eyes. But in the midst of the chaos, something inside her, or rather someone, gave her strength she didn't even know she had. The days following that conversation dragged on like a never-ending storm in Emily's life. Ethan was physically present in the house, but his emotional absence was overwhelming. He spent hours locked in the office, avoiding any kind of interaction, and the few words exchanged between them were cold, distant, as if an invisible abyss separated them. Emily tried to keep the routine, but the silence was deafening. During breakfast, the coffee cups cooled untouched, while Ethan's gaze seemed to cross her. Deep down, she knew something deeper was happening to him, but no matter how hard she tried, he refused to share his thoughts. On an especially cold night, Emily decided to try one more time. She waited until he turned off the laptop and went to the living room. "Ethan, please, we need to talk. We can't go on like this," he said, his voice breaking. He sighed, rubbing his temples as if he were carrying the weight of the world. "Emily, I already told you. I don't know how to deal with it. It's a lot of pressure. I feel like I'm being pushed into something I didn't choose. But we are both responsible for it. That baby is part of both of us, Ethan. Part of what we build together. I didn't ask for it now. You want that baby, but... and me? No one asked what I wanted," he replied, his voice oscillating between frustration and sadness. Those words hit Emily like a punch. She felt the anger begin to bubble up. "Do you think it was easy for me to hear this news? That I was completely ready for it? But I accepted because it's our son, Ethan. I thought you'd do the same." The discussion escalated, with voices echoing through the house. The tension that had built up finally exploded, bringing to the surface insecurities and fears that they both held. Ethan, overcome by the weight of the pressure, finally played the words Emily dreaded to hear. "Maybe I need some time away. To think. To understand what I want." "A time away," Emily repeated, stunned. "Are you serious? Are you going to leave me here, alone, pregnant, while you run away to think?" "I'm not running away," Ethan replied, looking away. "I just need space." That same night, he packed a small suitcase and walked out the door without saying where he was going or how long he would be gone. Emily stood in the doorway, holding back her tears until the car's headlights disappeared into the darkness. When he finally turned around, he realized the emptiness of the house, now as great and oppressive as the emptiness he felt in his chest. The weeks that followed were a real test for Emily. Ethan didn't call, didn't text, and she decided she wouldn't look for him either. Proud but shattered, Emily began to rebuild the routine on her own. Between doctor's appointments, work, and lonely nights, she tried to hold on to the idea that she could get through it. But there were times when loneliness was unbearable, like when she felt the baby move for the first time and realized that she had no one by her side to share that magical moment. She cried that night, hugging a pillow, feeling that the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Despite this, Emily began to find strength where she didn't know existed. With each new ultrasound, with each heartbeat of the baby she heard, she felt something grow inside her. It was not just the life of the little being that she carried, but an inner strength, a determination that she would be enough no matter what. Ethan could have chosen to leave, but Emily chose to stay, and to her that made all the difference. Emily soon realized that the biggest test would not be Ethan's absence, but facing the world that seemed to crumble around her. The work began to charge her energy, and her colleagues, once supportive, now looked at her with a mixture of pity and judgment. Veiled comments about her husband's absence and doubts about her ability to continue at the same pace began to emerge in the corridors. "Emily, are you okay?" asked her boss, Miranda, one day after a particularly stressful meeting. "You don't have to carry everything yourself, you know?" "I'm fine," Emily replied firmly, even though she felt the lump form in her throat. She knew that if she showed any sign of weakness, she might lose her position, and that was something she just couldn't allow. At the same time, doctor's appointments became a constant reminder of her situation. Sitting in the waiting room, surrounded by happy couples who held hands and exchanged complicit smiles, Emily felt an emptiness. When the doctor asked about her father, she gave quick answers and changed the subject, but the weight of the questions hung over her. One morning, while getting ready for work, Emily received a message from her mother who lived in another city. "Emily, we need to talk. I know things are difficult, but you can't get through it alone." Emily hesitated before answering. She didn't want to admit her vulnerability even to her own family, but she knew she needed support. He decided to accept the invitation to spend the weekend with his parents. Perhaps a little familiar comfort could lighten the load. Over the weekend, her mother, Grace, was careful to broach the subject. "Emily, you're strong, you always have been. But it's okay to admit you're scared. It's okay to feel like you can't do it all alone. I know, Mom. But if I don't, who will do it? Ethan left. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want us." Grace held her daughter's hand with a firm gaze. "This is not about what he wants. It's about what you want. And I know you'll find a way because you always do." Those words stayed with Emily for the next few days, like a mantra she repeated to herself when the going got tough. But the tests kept coming. One afternoon, while at the grocery store, Emily ran into an old friend, Lisa, who seemed eager to update on all the details of her perfect life and ask inconvenient questions. "Is Ethan okay? I haven't seen you together in a while," Lisa asked, with that fake tone of concern. Emily took a deep breath before replying, "He's traveling, but we're fine. Thank you for asking." It was a lie, of course, but Emily realized that she didn't always have to explain her life to everyone. She began to learn to protect her energy, not to allow judgments and invasive questions to bring her down. However, the biggest challenge came when Emily received an unexpected call from Ethan, weeks after her departure. He was cold, distant, but there was something in his voice that made her uneasy. "Emily, I need more time. I don't know if I can go back," he said. "More time?" she replied, trying to control the emotions that threatened to overflow. "You've had enough time, Ethan. It's not about you anymore. It's about the baby, about us. And I can't keep waiting for you to decide if you want to be there or not." He fell silent on the other end of the line, and Emily realized that this conversation was more for her than for him. It was confirmation that no matter what Ethan decided, she would move on. That night marked a turning point. Emily cried, yes, but she also felt an inner fire she hadn't felt before. She was being tested in every way possible, but each challenge seemed to only strengthen her. Emily began assembling the baby's room by herself, painting the walls a soft yellow and assembling the furniture with determination. With each piece fitted, she felt closer to her new life, more connected with the baby she hadn't even met yet. She didn't have all the answers, and there were still times when loneliness felt overwhelming. But deep down, Emily knew she was growing up, not just as a mother, but as a person. And every day, she felt more prepared to face whatever came her way. The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster for Emily. She tried to balance work, pregnancy, and preparations for the baby. But on many nights, she found herself sitting alone on the couch, staring into the void, feeling on the verge of a breakdown. It was on one of those nights, while rummaging through old boxes in the basement for a special blanket her grandmother had made, that Emily found something unexpected: a diary. It was the diary of her grandmother, Margaret, who was always a model of strength and wisdom for her. Margaret had been a resilient woman, someone who faced loss and hardship without ever losing hope. Emily didn't know that diary existed, but when she opened the first page, she saw a sentence written in a firm handwriting: "Life tests us not to break us, but to reveal our strength." Sensing a growing curiosity, Emily began to read. The pages were filled with stories about the challenges Margaret faced during her youth, the early loss of her parents, the difficult years working to support her younger siblings, and even the moment when she was widowed and had to raise 3 children on her own. Every word seemed like direct advice to Emily. In one passage, Margaret wrote about how, in her darkest moments, she found support in an elderly neighbor, a woman named Eleanor, who taught her the importance of asking for help and accepting that no one can overcome everything alone. "There is no weakness in seeking support," said one of the underlined phrases. "The real strength is in recognizing when we need others." Those words stirred something in Emily. Until then, she had insisted on facing everything alone, as if admitting the need for help was a failure. But maybe it was time to change that. The next day, Emily decided to do something she had been putting off for weeks. She returned to the maternity clinic where she had enrolled early in her pregnancy, but never attended. It was a community space where pregnant women gathered to exchange experiences, receive guidance, and simply support each other. As soon as she entered, she was greeted by a middle-aged woman named Helen, who seemed to brim with calm and understanding. Helen was something of an advisor in the group, someone who had helped hundreds of women in similar situations. "Emily, I'm so glad you came. We've been waiting for you," Helen said with a warm smile. In the following encounters, Emily began to open up, sharing her story with other women who, like her, were facing their own challenges. Some were alone, others had partners present, but they all had something in common: the need for mutual support. Helen, who seemed to have a natural gift for finding practical and emotional solutions, began to help Emily change her perspective. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," Helen said during a conversation after a meeting. "All you have to do is take it one step at a time. And remember, you are not alone." Helen also encouraged Emily to explore a practice she used herself: writing. Just as Margaret's diary had been a beacon for Emily, Helen believed that putting her thoughts and feelings on paper could be liberating. That same night, Emily took out a blank notebook and began writing. She wrote about her insecurities, her fears, and most of all, her hopes for the future. Over time, she realized that this exercise not only relieved her mind, but also helped her connect even more with the baby she was carrying. Emily also began to approach some of the women in the group, especially a young woman named Claire, who was pregnant with twins and facing a messy divorce. The two began texting each other daily, supporting each other through the ups and downs of pregnancy. "You inspire me so much," Claire said one day. "I look at you and think, if she can do it, so can I." Emily didn't know what to answer at the moment. The idea that her struggle could inspire someone was something she had never considered, but which suddenly seemed to give even more purpose to her journey. With every meeting and every conversation, Emily felt like she was, little by little, rebuilding her life. Helen and the other women in the group became her support network, her safe haven. And while Ethan's absence was still painful, she began to realize that the strength she needed came not from him, but from within her, and from the connections she was willing to create. Now, With Margaret's diary in one hand and her own writing in the other, Emily felt that she was, at last, finding her way to herself. And more importantly, for the future she was determined to build for herself and her baby. It was a sunny afternoon, and Emily, eager to unwind and connect with the world around her, decided to stroll through the park near her home. The place was known for its trails lined with tall trees, a tranquil lake, and a small local farmer's market. With the shopping cart in hand and her thoughts still confused, she tried to focus on the small joys of the moment. The singing of birds, the smell of fresh bread coming from one of the stalls, and the light breeze that relieved the heat of the day. As she walked distractedly, with her head full of lists and worries, a slight stumble caused her shopping bag to destabilize. An apple rolled across the ground, followed by a packet of cookies and a small jar of honey that shattered, scattering the golden liquid on the pavement. Emily let out a frustrated sigh and bent down to try to contain the mess. "Let me help," said a male voice behind her. She turned and saw a gentle-looking man with a camera hanging around his neck and warm brown eyes. He quickly knelt down beside her, picking up the items that were still intact. "Oh, thank you. Today is not my best day," Emily replied, trying to wipe the honey dripping on the floor with a useless tissue. "Everyone has days like this, but the good news is that they end up passing," he said, with a slight smile as he handed the apple back to Emily. "My name is Nathan, by the way." "Emily, thank you again." The conversation that followed was unexpectedly natural. Nathan commented that he was in the park taking photos for a personal project about everyday moments and how extraordinary they can be. This piqued Emily's curiosity. Extraordinary moments on ordinary days? It's an interesting idea. Yes, I think that many times we are so focused on problems that we forget to understand what is beautiful around us. Like now, for example. Emily raised an eyebrow, confused. "Now? You mean honey scattered on the floor?" Nathan laughed. "I mean the fact that you stayed calm and didn't freak out. Who accepted help without hesitation. Those little things show a lot about who you are." The simplicity and sincerity of his words struck a chord with Emily. It had been so long since she had felt seen by anyone that she had not heard anything that sounded genuine, and for some reason she felt comfortable sharing a little of herself. "Well, maybe I didn't freak out on the outside, but on the inside, it's chaos. My life feels like a mess right now." Nathan didn't press, but the thoughtful look he cast at her encouraged her to keep going. "I'm expecting a baby, alone, and it's been hard to imagine how I'm going to handle it all." He paused before answering, as if he wanted to choose his words well. "I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes, but from what I see, you're stronger than you think. Just being here, facing the day, is proof of that." The two spent a good deal of time talking there, sitting on the park bench. Nathan said he also faced his own challenges. After losing his parents in an accident, he used photography as a way to cope with grief and find meaning in his life. He talked about how he learned to value the small moments, the unexpected encounters, and the beauty in imperfections. As the sun began to set, Emily realized that she hadn't felt so light and at ease in months. There was something about Nathan, perhaps the combination of his authenticity and his hopeful outlook on life, that made her want to believe that things could really get better. Before they said goodbye, Nathan handed her a small card with his contact information. "If you need help loading groceries in the future or if you want to talk, you can call me. And who knows, I can teach you a little about photography. Sometimes looking at the world through the lens of a camera changes everything." Emily smiled, holding the card. "Thank you, Nathan. Maybe I'll take that offer." As she walked back home, something had changed inside her. Nathan hadn't solved her problems, but in just one afternoon, he reminded her that there was still room for genuine connections, for new possibilities, for new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like life wasn't just pushing her down. She was offering a hand to help her up. The days following the meeting in the park brought Emily a confusing mixture of hope and unease. Despite having found in Nathan an unexpected source of support, Ethan's absence still hung like a constant shadow in his life. Every night as he went to bed, thoughts invaded his mind like incessant waves. Am I enough? Will the baby miss a father? What should I do differently? Emily realized that while she wanted to move on, there was a part of her that still carried the weight of Ethan's choices, and that felt like a battle she faced alone. One afternoon, while organizing the baby's small clothes that she was slowly starting to buy, she felt a sudden need to let off steam. She took Nathan's card, which she had kept in the kitchen drawer, and hesitated before dialing the number. It's just a conversation, he thought. On the other end of the line, Nathan answered with his warm voice. Hi, Emily. What a good surprise. Hi, Nathan. I hope I'm not getting in the way. Not at all. I'm editing some photos, but I can always take a break. What happened? Emily took a deep breath, trying to hide the vulnerability that threatened to overflow. I think I needed to talk to someone. You know those days when it seems like the whole world is on top of you. I know it well, Nathan replied in an understanding tone. Want to meet in the park? Sometimes changing environments helps. Shortly after, they were sitting on a bench by the lake. Emily stared at the water, trying to collect her thoughts. I know you said you think I'm strong, but honestly, I don't feel that way. Each day seems more difficult than the last. It's like everything is out of my control. Nathan was silent for a moment, absorbing her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and firm. Emily, I think part of the strength is admitting when we're overwhelmed. It's not weakness to feel fear or insecurity. It just proves that you care. And you know what? You don't have to face all of this alone. Emily turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. But that's what scares me. Relying on someone has never worked out for me. Ethan, he left me. How can I trust again? Nathan leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. I'm not going to pretend I understand exactly what you're feeling, but I want to tell you one thing. Trusting someone doesn't mean losing your independence. It is having someone by your side, not in front of you or behind. And I'm not here to save you, Emily. I just want you to know that there's someone cheering for you. These words struck Emily in an unexpected way. She had never thought of the idea of support in this way. For so long, she had associated trusting someone with being fragile, with letting go of herself. But perhaps there was another way to look at it. You make it look so simple, she said with a shy smile. It's not simple, Nathan replied, smiling back. It took me years to learn this. I lost the people I loved the most, and for a long time I closed myself off from the world. But I realized that if I continued like this, I would only be prolonging my own pain. That's when I decided that opening up to others wouldn't make me more vulnerable. It would make me more human. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, Emily realized that this conversation had planted something inside her, a seed of acceptance. Accepting that feeling fear was natural, accepting that pain was part of the process of moving on. And perhaps to accept that there were people, like Nathan, who could offer support without expecting anything in return. Before they said goodbye, Nathan looked at her and said something that echoed in his mind for the rest of the night. You don't need to have all the answers right now, Emily. Sometimes just taking the next step is enough. And for the first time in a long time, she began to believe it. On a quiet evening, as they walked through the park lit by soft lights, Nathan felt it was time to be completely honest. He stopped, turned to Emily and said with a mixture of hesitation and courage, Emily, I know it's not the right time, but I need to tell you something. Since I met you, I feel something different, something special. But I also know that you need your time, and I don't want to rush anything. Emily was silent for a few moments, feeling the weight of sincerity in Nathan's words. She looked at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Nathan, I don't know if I'm ready, but what did you say? It means a lot to me. Perhaps, maybe I can imagine something else in the future. It was a moment of deep connection, with no immediate promises, but full of hope. As the pregnancy progressed, Nathan became a constant presence in Emily's life. He made a point of accompanying her to medical appointments, helped set up the baby's room, and whenever she felt overwhelmed, he was there with a word of comfort or a simple gesture, such as bringing a cup of tea. Emily, who previously felt alone on her journey, realized that Nathan was not there to replace Ethan, but to build something new and genuine alongside her. Her dedication was not only for her, but also for the baby who was about to arrive. One morning, Emily woke up in intense pain. Labor had started earlier than expected. She called Nathan, who arrived within minutes, and rushed her to the hospital. Throughout the process, he was by her side, holding her hand, offering words of encouragement, and helping her to face that intense moment. When the baby's cry finally echoed through the delivery room, Emily felt a surge of relief and joy. She looked at Nathan, who also had tears in his eyes, and realized that this moment was not just about the birth of her son, but about the formation of something new, a union based on love, respect, and overcoming. Months later, Emily held her baby in her arms while Nathan played with him, drawing laughter. Watching that scene, she realized how much her life had changed. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined her. Emily found peace in the present and happiness in accepting the unexpected. Alongside Nathan, she discovered that true love didn't have to be perfect or planned, but rather built, one step at a time, with patience and sincerity. And so, with a new chapter unfolding before them, Emily, Nathan, and the baby began to write their own story, one that was full of challenges, but also filled with love and hope.